And now, Legal Perspective with Nick Clekis.
The legal world is a maze of complicated processes. And when it comes to getting someone out of custody, things can get even trickier. Here to help us understand the bail and bond process is Ali Menegakis, attorney for Clekis Law Firm. Ali, thank you for being here with us today. And can you start off by just explaining what is bond and what is the process?
Well, bond is really an assurance in form of money to assure someone's going to come back to their court date instead of sitting in custody until their court date. So when you are arrested, you go to a bond hearing within 24 hours. That is your right. Mm-hmm. And at that hearing, a judge listens to a bunch of factors that we'll talk about to decide whether you should be afforded bond. There is a presumption to release someone without having any kind of monetary bond. Mm-hmm. That's called being released on your own recognizance or your personal recognizance, and that is the presumption. But if the judge decides that you need a monetary bond, then they will issue that, and you can either pay that money to the court itself and then get it returned to you when you go to your court date and resolve your case, or you can pay 10% to a bondsman for them to post the bond for you. Okay. But you'll never get that 10% back.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you talked about that there's a bunch of different factors that play into what the judge decides to put the bond at. What are some of those? What does the decision process look like?
Yeah, it's interesting, because when we think about bond, I usually think about, well, why do we have this bond system? What's the point of it? If the point is to make sure that someone comes back to court, is paying money going to really ensure that you come back to court? What if you have a lot of money? And
it depends on the person, right?
Right. I mean, we think about Diddy, right? And his case right now, he's being held in custody without bond. Why is that? Because even if a judge were to set an exorbitant amount of bond, he's got a lot of money, and he could probably post it and care less and maybe not come back to court, is the argument. So he is a risk of flight. So that is one of the factors that we look at, or the judge looks at when determining whether to issue a bond or not. And the second one is the danger to the community. So that's looking at what type of a crime you committed, et cetera, and the evidence against you.
Okay, so I wanted to touch on that a little bit, is the danger to a community. Mm-hmm. So is there a typical range or an average amount for someone who, let's say, commits murder? Hmm. Is there a scale of what the bond usually looks like, or does it really vary on the crime itself, but then also the person being accused of committing the crime?
So historically, what would happen with bonds, and this goes back to medieval times and in England and Anglo-Saxon times, when they would the purpose of bond was to be the amount of money that was the maximum punishment for that crime, but at that time they were civil cases. So that's how they decided how much money to put. Then we started getting and generalizing bond more and making it a state criminal justice system. And so then the question is, well, how much money is enough? Well, some states have scheduled bonds, which means that there is a recommended amount for each type of charge, but truly it needs to be looked at, and the courts say that it should be looked at an individual basis. So if you were arrested, Taylor, they would look at different things. One, do you have ties to the community? Have you been here before? Do you work here? Are you going to come back to court? Are you from another state or another country where you don't really have any ties here? Or, for example, do you have a criminal history? Have you done this before? Have you not come back to court before? And are the allegations against you, even though you're presumed innocent, like we talked about last week, are the allegations so severe that we're concerned for the safety of the people if you get out? Mm-hmm.
And Ali, really quick, I do want to ask you, from a legal perspective, how do you view our current bail process as it stands in South Carolina?
Well, I mean, I think my standpoint when it comes to criminal justice issues. I'm the founder and executive director of South Carolina for Criminal Justice Reform, and our goal is to eliminate mass incarceration. And the reality is that bond disparately impacts certain communities. It disparately impacts especially poor communities. So people that it might be a low amount of bond to you or me or someone else, but to somebody else it might be too high. Yeah. And so what happens when you can't afford your bond? you sit in jail until your court date. And as we've talked about before, the wait time for a trial, at least in this county, is between 2 to 4 or 5 years sometimes. Yeah. So what does that mean? If you're stuck in jail before your court date, you are going to lose your house, lose your rent, lose your job, not be able to provide for your family. So even if you're found not guilty after getting out or guilty, my concern and a lot of advocates for reforming the bond process is that it's actually increasing crime because you're having an individual who's released at the end with less resources that they had to begin with. So while bond might secure the public for a period of time, kind of like we talk about the presumption of innocence, are we going to sacrifice the majority of people that maybe shouldn't be incarcerated because we're afraid of letting out a really dangerous person or an outlier? Yeah. Or are we going to try and make it fair and have bond assessed based on each person's personal history?
Wonderfully said, Allie. For more information on South Carolina for criminal justice reform, we're going to put that website down below. And 843-9 is obviously how to get in touch with Allie at Clekis Law Firm. Always a pleasure talking to you. I learned so much.
Likewise.
We're back after this.
This has been Legal Perspective with Nick Clekis.